Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in a little bit more in depth on a great viewer question, and that is to understand, I guess, the connection between self-sabotaging behaviors and being in a relationship with someone who is manipulative, someone who is controlling, someone who could be psychopathic or malignant narcissistic, someone who really has sort of gotten under the skin, has gotten hold of your control panels, who basically has the ability to send your life in the wrong direction and the wrong direction fast if it is not identified, managed, and handled. In once you kind of wake up and kind of discover what is going on with this dynamic. And oftentimes it comes in basically, like just without even acknowledging what is self-sabotaging. So, in other words, when we're talking about a relationship with someone who is very controlling, they will disempower others, meaning they will take away their ability to be self-directed and have self-control, self-management, self-governing, balance, being able to, be functional, happy, surround themselves with positive people. There's that self-trust that's developed. There's that foundation of I am, and that I am is okay. It's not based on something grandiose. It's not based on something delusional. It's based on something pragmatic and real and doable and wantable. It's within pragmatic or practical, doing, it's not grandiose. In other words, the narcissist, though, is very grandiose, very entitled, and oftentimes very controlling and manipulative by being demeaning, by being condescending. So they manipulate by the negative. They manipulate through the taunting, the teasing, the scapegoating, the isolating, the withdrawing of affection, the lack of positivity. It can even just be the lack and withholding thereof that even has a negative or more negative effect because it causes the cycle of self-doubt and self-deprecation to run the show. So it's like a default mechanism. So if someone is controlling over you and restrictive and restraining and just sort of telling you that, who you are is not acceptable, permittable, wanted, or welcomed, then they try to shape, mold, and create you into the being that they want you to be, that they think is in your best interest. But it's the opposite of education, which is educare, which means to bring out, to like educate you, so you can become educated about how to live. It's from the opposite. It's from the polar opposite. It's where somebody basically tries to treat you like a puppet, like I'm just gonna hook on a little string here, hook on a string there, hook on a string there, hook on another string there. Next thing you know, they're telling you how to walk, talk, for them, not based from within, not generating from an internal locus of control, but what becomes an external locus of control where they're, calling the shots for you in your life. To some degree, that give and take can be awesome and beautiful, which is based on trust and, growing together in relationships. So that can be a real positive. Hey, I've got this. Will you get, that, can be a positive. But when we're talking about manipulating and controlling, you're basically trying to shrink somebody down to the size of a toothpick so that they can have control over you. And in other words, their will becomes shrank down. Their I am becomes null and or void and invisible or blurred. It's not very clear. You're treated with hatred, derision, when it gets very severe. The other aspect of really what can be sort of this sort of negative is the controlling nature of someone who is manipulative will oftentimes use deception and these very strong negative states or very strong positive states to guide you rather than you guiding yourself. So you don't realize while it's while the change is taking place, because it's very gradual in the beginning, or it's just like, well, this is, based on this lifestyle, this is the way to live. But how the self-sabotaging and the drug addiction, the gambling addiction, the alcoholism, overindulgence in alcohol. It becomes the body in the beginning, might use it to take off the edge or a social thing. And the body is usually very sensitive and it becomes very sick. People throw up, they black out, they're sick for days. It's not pleasant, but people then override and their body then gets numbed out and then desensitized and then needs more of this substance where in other words, the drink is sort of calibrating the desire for it inside, if you will. I mean, I'm gonna stay on topic here, but when we talk about that, then tendency to self-sabotaging behaviors and self-destructive, then, in other words, what is against your better nature, what is against your better rationale, what is better based for you on all things considered, would be this, but so your rationality would pick up and normally be able to be okay with that. But when you're with someone who is controlling and manipulative, your normalcy is not enough to give you enough feeling of freedom and creativity and communication and coming forth and growing and sort of being able to communicate and live your life without the restraint, without the inhibited, without all that sort of controlling going on. That is restricted, it's inhibited, or it's perverted, and it's sent in a wrong direction. Especially if you're a person of means, it can completely go the wrong way and not in your best interest. But with this then controlling, see, people ultimately need to be self-governing. To a certain degree, a dependency and a reliance on can be so long, until people begin to grow, until they begin to get older, mature. They're entering new years and stages of their life, and people aren't static, they change. Their desires, their needs change, and even more pronounced as they get older. You can't, what you wanted in your 20s is not what you want in your 40s, and what you want in your 50s is not what you wanted in your 20s. You're not able to live the same. The people who are narcissistic, though, they might try to stay very stuck in that and perpetuate these immature, behaviors that make them appear as if they're still the guy, at the band, and meanwhile they've got a real alcohol problem, and they're sick and they're miserable and they stink and they throw up and they black out and they think that they're funny and they're above it all because they're narcissistic, whatever. That is not attractive, So a lot of people, you need to understand that that the self-sabotaging becomes, it is fueled from a couple of things. A, you need freedom. You need to be free. You need to be able to say, I'm going to be this person. I'm going to be this way. This is who I am. This is what I need. And I'm not going to live this way anymore. Especially if you're with a narcissist or a psychopath, they're going to call a lot of the terms and a lot of the shots, and you will begin to feel less and less free because your life is not on your call or your shots or your decision making or your wants or your needs. It basically becomes lopsided, like a seesaw that just, the bigger person's on the bottom and then that little guy is stuck up at top. He can't move anywhere. He can't get himself down because the big fat guy is on the bottom and they're not playing fair with you. I mean, that's what ends up happening. Then you become to feel like that you're mocked because you can't handle it, or you can't keep up with a relationship. That's an old good one. You can't keep up with me. I'm too this, when it's like, well, I don't want to live that conditional, half-charmed lifestyle, or, that's based on the external locus of control, all that ego-based stuff, which you can't, if once you make your decision, I'm not going to live that way, and I don't need to, and I don't want to, and I'm okay with that, and I'm okay with you. Once you've gone through that, then you can let it go, and you don't have to sabotage and blur your needs. The self-sabotaging is you're trying to put a delay on sort of validating and accepting your own needs and being able to really embrace them with self-love, which is oftentimes a difficult space to be in if you haven't been able to develop and field your resourcefulness from self-recognition, self-trust, and responding to that versus always reacting to somebody else's needs. So there becomes a implanting of, it's I mean, this is an excellent question, an excellent topic. There's so much there. So when someone is trying to control you, so once again, the freedom, so oftentimes self-sabotage can be as a method of escape when they don't feel free and in control. If you don't feel free and in control, then you oftentimes want to change that feeling. And so that will lead to anxiety, the fight or flight, and oftentimes irrational thinking. And oftentimes a way to change that feeling right away is through self-medicating, what is known as self-medicating. This doesn't feel good, so I'm going to drink this whiskey, I'm going to drink this vodka, I'm going to drink this beers, whatever it is that the people use. It becomes self-medicating. And basically you're playing doctor with yourself, that you have not, basically you're trying to give yourself a prescription or a change for your life, and this is the only thing that is available, or that you see widely publicized that people do, and that they're laughing when they do it, and you want to be that way, so you might as well go ahead and get a drink. What they don't show you is the guy, who doesn't have a home, whose marriage is on the rocks, who has, 100,000 of credit card debt or whatever, So you have to understand that you need to be able to think for yourself. And so that can be part of the outcome and then lesson learned of sort of that. I mean, there's so much more to that. I mean, that's just, on the iceberg of the surface of sort of how that dynamic works, of how being in a relationship with someone who is, insidiously deceitful, and mistreating of you, especially emotionally and physically. It's the emotional and psychological aspect that I would say is a more of a chronic, for people who have been in relationships. There might have been domestic, slapping of face, whatever, punching, whatever it is people do or find themselves encountering in their relationships, terribly painful and shaming stuff, difficult to, if any, to bounce back from. It is something that you need to heal oneself and learn how to heal. And like a viewer stated, just as a quick side note, about the long or the short videos, you can, our videos tend to go in depth because I think there's a lot of people who need in depth. I can do shorter videos, but this is meant to assist you. And we do, like a viewer so aptly stated too, you're in a small town, you might not have a therapist right there, and or your health insurance is a high deductible. You're going to be spending $150 out of pocket for any sort of therapy visit, and you've got a $3,000 deductible, and you're going to be out of pocket for $3,000 to get anyone for any sort of assistance. So we're here to embrace you either way. But anyway, I digress. So what we're stating is that, so the control, so first of all, let's talk about that need for freedom. If you're always controlled, you are going to develop resentment. That is a very uncomfortable feeling to express, and oftentimes not socially acceptable. But it can really, really mount up and mountain up within you if you are overly controlled. In other words, not allowed to express yourself, your viewpoint, what you think. You're not allowed to exercise that. So pretty soon, like a muscle, if you don't lose it, you feel that you lose it. So you lose your identity, you lose your I am, you develop a weakness, or a just sort of a that is your default. The positive becomes the default, and then the negative is sort of running the show. And the pain, to wear off that negative pain, is easy to go to alcohol. What they show in all the advertisement, people are, attractive, dating, cheers, they're smiling. I mean, it looks like they all just, whatever, they all just, won the lottery or something, or if it's somebody's birthday every day, it's just, so that gives you a feeling of oftentimes a feeling of soothing, taking the edge off, and it gives you sort of an identity of like, I am a drinker. So it makes you feel that you're sort of working on things, but you're not. And so it's a self-medicating. I mean, a lot of that is in the obvious for the self-medicating, but I think to understand the psychological sort of pieces at play are one that you need to be able to express yourself and not feel restrained or not believed or not trusted, or feel that you can trust the right person and communicate with the right people. Because if you've been only really sort of surrounded by people who are manipulative, then oftentimes your ability to communicate is not heard. They're not getting you. They don't have empathy. They don't have compassion. They don't have conscience. So it's like they're hearing what they want to hear, and then they reflect back to you what they want to hear. So you feel that you're sort of become shut out, isolated, not on their wavelength anymore, disconnected. And so the feeling then is, rather than being so rather than embracing yourself, it becomes like you're reflecting yourself back as they saw you, which is in a negative, that's erroneous thinking. It's that external locus of control, which once again, it's like you're having empathy for the enemy, so you're adopting the ways of the enemy to try to curtail you, to try to muffle you, to try to sort of extinguish your life, happiness. So it's like going down the wrong path. It's the journey that's really heavy, not fun, and oftentimes it's filled with then that what becomes then not feeling understood, which becomes I'm miserable, which becomes I'm unlovable, and I'm I don't have it going on. I will never make it. This I can't start. I will. I can't make it. I will. All these really just potent negative thoughts can start filtrating the system, and there becomes like, who do I turn to? And then you've got the crisis going on. But you need to be able to pull yourself off like a suction cup, off the wall, and you need to be able to detach from this negative source of control and manipulation, and realize that oftentimes it is the interpretation of that control and manipulation which causes that negative cycle. Also, I feel not only is it not only because one is restrained, but also because one is not looked upon with trust and with respect. And so the positive I am doesn't get a chance to really take root. And so it's always trying to be muffled. And so in order to muffle it for that time being, people will oftentimes then result in more self-sabotaging to keep themselves down, keep themselves stuck, keep themselves not thinking properly, not thinking at all, not bathing, not working, being isolated. Then they feel that they are then, people don't look at them, that they are being mocked, So then they become really operating on that self-fulfilling prophecy. And also, so that projection of not being loved or feeling that you're wanted by that person then becomes internalized and identified with. That's the problem. And then people then become their own antagonists, their own, and then they can become then antagonistic to others, when it really becomes full blown. They're antagonistic to themselves, they're antagonistic to others, they're pushing away good people, they're pushing away bad people, they're pushing away any people, they're just shutting it out, and then next thing you know, they're living as a shutout or shut in. So, you need to realize that oftentimes there's a very strong feeling of contempt that can be pervasive in a controlling relationship, meaning you're in my way, you're trying to, let me live my life, you're trying to get in my way. And so, it can be very contemptuous, meaning there's a lot of really hateful things that can be done and said between some people that I've heard. And it's just gets horrific. I mean, and we're talking, people, who should know better, and so that's neither here nor there, but you need to just say, so it can be as a way also to an escape, the discomfort. I mean, if you're constantly being berated, criticized, looked down at, not smiled at, you're going to, basically and if you don't have a positive input, which is where your recovery dates need to come in. If you don't have a positive injection of nurturing and care and smiles and warmth and, support and ideas, you're not going to see the bright sunny side of the street. You're always going to be looking in the alley. You're going to be stuck. You're not giving yourself a chance because nobody has given you a chance. So the chance has to begin with you, and you have to learn to develop it on a balance. So that's why we see, whoa, people either go way out or way in. There's these extremes. So it's okay to take the baby steps, and the baby steps might give you the biggest, highest stages of growth, where just one little change, wow. Next thing you know, you're growing like gangbusters, and you're finally getting it, and you're like, man, I can't get enough of these podcasts. I can't get enough of these books. I can't get enough of writing in my recovery book. I can't get enough of, surrounding and priming my subconscious for the positive. And then being more and developing the sensitivity to yourself, like, whoa, like all that drinking, that really was not a good idea. And like, I'm not doing that now. And like, I can see how far I've come. So you can give yourself kudos, when you do that and you don't, fall back. But so if you find yourself falling back, realize it's important to develop a new part of a ritual. Instead of going back to the bottle, start going to candles. Light 6 candles rather than drinking a 6-pack. Begin to develop a real sacred space and developing that magical ambiance that you need to feel around you, to feel uplifted, inspired at that level that you want to be at and that you deserve to be at. And once you go for it and, try and do the do and follow up and apply what you're supposed to do, like we talking about in all the sections of the recovery journal, and all the different steps that we talk about in the that I'm going to be breaking out, I think in the memberships a little bit more, so people can really get a grip, is then to exit out of that negative frame of self-talk, and then feeling that you're an object of mockery or disdain, like all that, that it's treated that you're so, all the negatives. I mean, they can be very, very severe from what we hear on a lot of the stories that people have relayed here. I mean, just where lovely people are treated just horribly. I mean, it's just a horrific thing. And I really have a soft spot for people, who this can be prevented. It's just like, this needs to be prevented. It's not right to live under such stress. Like, it's not necessary. You don't have to resort to these situations, and defile yourself. Eating the junk food, eating, this food that isn't even nutrition. It's just, it's, genetically modified, and it's basically a couple molecules shy of plastic. Like, it is, and you're wondering why people blow up. They're eating these foods, which are very high in caloric intake, in absence of any nutritive value, like a lot of sugary stuff. It doesn't have any nutritive value. Your body, you get, this glucose, but then you've got the crash, but there's no nutrition, so they don't feel satisfied. And so they eat more of it thinking that that's what they need. And it just creates this negative self-sabotaging cycle. So people use a lot of these negative tools, and they're like, this ain't me at all. Like, like a viewer so aptly stated, she gained a ton of weight. Well, wow, this 60 pounds, is this keeping them around me? Am I just trying to, like, excuse me, and you have to have a, excuse me, you have to be able to have a substitute, and so, like, if you've been eating a lot of ice cream, I was going to show this to the viewers. What's an awesome thing is you can get this kefir. This one is by Lifeway, but it's like a really great smoothie, and, it's like got all the protein and all the calcium. Rather than eating your ice cream, be like, you know what, I'm still going to treat myself. Get yourself a nice little fancy glass, pour yourself a smoothie, that's like super rich and indulgent, and you're like, this is satisfying, and you can really savor it, and you're doing something good for your body rather than negative. So turning around the negative things that you've been doing and into the positive, but where you still are feeling indulgent and satisfied, but you're not doing the negative. If you're doing, the smoking, start going for walks. I think a lot of what people get addicted to instead of the tobacco or the other stuff is that you're regulating your breathing, and you're just, you're creating this new feeling. I mean, go for a walk. It's going to give you the same release. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. And I hope that the videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Cheers, peace out, have a beautiful day.